Hello and welcome to another edition of Food Chain with me, Jessie Eramagbako. Today we'll put a focus on the agri sector. Now the agriculture sector serves as a means of livelihood for many Ghanaians, yet concerns over productivity, climate pressures and food insecurity are still topical. Today on the Food Chain, we'll be speaking to the Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Mr. Bismarck Norte, to assess the effectiveness of current policies and how to safeguard Ghana's food security. Stay with us. Hello, Mr. Norte. Thank you for having us and welcome to the Food Chain.
Thank you for having me.
All right. From your perspective as peasant farmers, what's the current state of the agri sector?
Well, thank you once again for the opportunity. The state of the sector from the perspective of the smallholder farmer, which is the group that we represent, is that things could have been much better than what we are currently experiencing. I think from the beginning of last year, the signals for a very productive sector was quite high. When we saw some good macroeconomic fortunes where the CD was appreciating, the dollar was coming down, it had some effect on the prices of inputs. So there was some marginal reduction in input prices, which was quite good for the farmer. The government had also started their Feed Ghana program, which included providing some inputs for smallholder farmers, which was good. Last year, the rains were very favorable for the farmers, so they were reasonably very good harvests. Okay. The problem that characterized the farming season happened at the end of the value chain, where after having excessive harvests, the farmers were not able to access markets. And for us, that is the downside of the current state of the sector, because we always make the point that sometimes the farmer might not necessarily need input support. He or she might not necessarily need subsidy, but once the farmer is aware that there is a guaranteed market to offtake his or her produce, he or she has that incentive to produce more. Because when I produce and I know there's a ready market to pick up what I've produced, I can recover my cost of production and make some gains. I will invest in that. But where the situation is where the farmers, after all this investment, they find themselves at the losing end. For instance, for those who are into the perishables, like the vegetables and stuff like that, you know, those crops, they don't take much long before they start perishing. So if you harvest and within maximum 1 week you do not have a buyer, you start counting your losses. For those who are into the production of grains like the maize and rice, to an extent they have some period, because those they have longer life to last. However, the more, because they do not have proper storage facilities, they do not have a place to store them, there's no system in place, this produce will be subjected to pest infestation, weevil infestation, and then eventually they lose everything. There are instances to where you even have farmers who have their produce on the farm, they are yet to harvest, but they realize that there is no market for their produce. So they calculate between spending money to go and harvest when I'm not sure if the produce will be bought, other than using that money for something else, they will prefer the latter. So you have a lot of them having their produce on the farms, not harvested, and they are left to rot, because they know the cost of harvesting them, though it will come at a higher cost, because you harvest, you are not getting market for it. So that has been the bane of the farmer in recent times, and I think that it is a major disincentive for the farmers. The cry has been very loud It is across almost all value chains. So even though you hear a lot of the rice farmers and maize farmers agitating, it actually goes beyond them. I have several farmers who are into the production of cassava, yam, plantain, always calling me that they have abundance of produce, but there's no market. So for me, the marketing aspect has been the biggest challenge for farmers in this current regime, and I think that there needs to be more if we want to ensure that consistently as a country we are able to produce to meet our population and even export. We actually have the opportunity to even clear this produce from the market. One, Ghana as a country, we do not have a proper database that will give us a ready information to know the food producing areas and areas where there are gaps, the forecast for the period, the stock, how many food cover do we have as a country. We do not even have that data. We do not even have data that shows that region A produces so much maize, for instance, and region B lacks a lot of maize. So we should get a system where there's so much production within A, we can move them to region B. There's nothing like that.
But would that help address the situation of the glut?
It will contribute. So there are different layers to it. Aside that, currently the country also owes ECOWAS about 27,000 tons of maize and rice that we took in 2024 because we anticipated shortage of produce, so we wanted to safeguard ourselves. So we borrowed. So there's an opportunity for the government to even buy what is in the market for the farmers and even supply to ECOWAS. Unfortunately, all these things are not being done, and that's the problem. The issue you asked about whether or not when we have the data to help, it will help because recently I do hear that some persons are complaining that despite a lower food inflation and a single-digit inflation, prices of food are relatively high. That cannot be the case when you go to the food-producing areas. Because for those, for instance, if you go to a place like Ejura, Tumu, the price of maize now has plummeted to an all-time low. If you have 300 cedis, you can get a bag of maize, which about 2 or 3 years ago, that was about almost 1,000 cedis. So if you go to that side of the country, you will get maize for low prices. But whoever is picking the maize from Tumu, transporting it, paying transport costs, whatever, storing it before bringing it to the market, he or she is also adding a lot of margins to it. And some also has to do with maybe include the greediness of whoever is involved, maybe based on the cost that they can carry. So by the time it gets to the consumer, the price would have gone up. So you realize that you, the consumer, you are paying more for the maize. But meanwhile, the farmer who had done the maize into me is not getting that value for what he or she produced. So there's a whole market constraint, market blockade that we have not been able to work around as a country. And that's a problem. And that's why when the announcement about the National Food Buffer Stock being resourced to go buy the food from the farmers, we're all excited, thinking that that's an opportunity. Our borders has become so porous that people are so taking advantage and importing this same produce through this unapproved route into the system. So we have situations where for instance, when we are talking about rice, people are bringing in inferior imported rice through unapproved route. They are not paying taxes. They are relatively cheaper. So you go to the market, there's a local rice farmer who has gone through all the hurdle of producing local rice and has spent so much. The rice is valued at 80 cedis per 5 kg bag. Then you have the imported rice which is coming from Vietnam or wherever, produced by farmers who have so much support from government. They bring it, they've evaded tax, selling for 60 cedis. And then the Ghanaian consumer goes and wants to buy rice. He looks at the two of them, which one will he pick? He picks the foreign rice. So we realize that the local rice is not moving even for the millers and aggregators to get them and do what? And produce and mill and sell. So for me, that is the problem. And that is what you want to see action by the government. Because if you don't do that, it is a major disincentive for the next farming season. If you are supporting me to produce enough and I'm producing, and yet I can't get value for what I'm producing, then you might as well stop the support. So the whole support should be very comprehensive and integrated. It shouldn't be across one value. And I think that over the years, that has been what our politicians take us through. They support one aspect of the value chain, which for them is tangible. So when they go to their platforms or their rallies, they say, oh, I supplied 10,000 bags of fertilizer to farmers. That's what they want to see. But it's not really about fertilizer. It's not really about seed. It goes beyond that. It's about sustainable production. How are we ensuring that we are producing all year round? If you go to the north at this time, there's generally no planting going on, except for those in the irrigation areas. But massive population enough, there's nothing to do now. How do we change that narrative? So for me, I think that these kind of things should be more progressive, more comprehensive, more integrated. The thing is that the policy documents on paper addresses them. If you read the Feed Ghana program, for instance, it tackles the entire value chain, from irrigation, input support, extension support, mechanization, marketing. It tackles everything.
So the challenge now is the implementation.
That's the problem. How do we actualize what you said they're going to do? That's the whole thing. And for me, and I always say that consistently, where you need to see the stats, because the major problem has been resource allocation. So you'd have wanted to see a lot more resources committed by government. But if you look at the budgets very well, realize that you're not doing much for the agricultural sector. For instance, in 2025 budget, when we did our analysis, just about less than 2% of the whole budget was going for agric. It was a worry. This year, they've upped it a bit, but it's less than 5%. So if you have a major sector like the agricultural sector that is employing millions, and you can't dedicate even 10% of allocation to that, then there's a problem. Then it is not a priority, as you are saying. And I think that's the angle where we need to also work on.
So we need more investments in the agri sector generally, but what aspects of the sector should there be more focus on?
Right. So for me, I spoke about the marketing aspect, which I think we need to work on our marketing infrastructure. The issue of storage. The previous government did the one district, one warehouse. As I'm talking to you, a lot of those warehouses are not operational, they are not functional. They've become breeding homes for rodents. There's no plan in place. There are some that are never been completed. There are others that even the locations, they are not accessible by road. It doesn't make sense. So we need to address that. Our road network, we need to work on it. The connecting routes from the farms to the various market centers or markets or warehouses, we need to work on that. Then we need to also look at our production infrastructure. As I mentioned, apart from maybe some parts of the middle belts and then the coastal, where occasionally they have 2 rainy seasons, the rest of the country is basically 1 rainy season. So when it doesn't rain, there's no agricultural activity, especially production. So, and if you look at the data, less than 10% of our agricultural lands are irrigated. So it means that when it comes to irrigation, we have a long way to go. So the resources that we have or we want to push on the sector, those are the areas we should focus on. The irrigation aspects. We need more irrigation facilities across the country. The equipment. We should be moving beyond hoe and cutlass farming. We are in 2026. You understand? People are using AI to do a lot of stuff, but we shouldn't be happy seeing our farmers using cutlass and hoe. Politicians shouldn't be excited when they are giving cutlass in holes to their constituents. We should move beyond that. How do we ensure that we are having mechanized agriculture, provision of mechanization equipment? That's one area I can also focus on. Then I also spoke about the markets. So markets, the irrigation infrastructure, and then the mechanization. Those are key things that we can work on. Once we are able to dedicate a lot of resources in that area, we should have met the farmer halfway, and the farmer will take it from there.
Yeah, government last year launched an irrigation program to establish irrigation facilities in the various regions of the country. Beyond that, do you think we have a challenge with maintenance and making good use of these facilities?
Okay, so when it comes to irrigation, the program they launched was called the Irrigation for Wealth program, and the idea of that program is to see to the establishment of major irrigation dams across 8 regions in Ghana. So those regions are regions where they do not have any major irrigation facility. You know, if you come to Ghana, there are some regions that they have. When you mention them, you can state one major dam they have. Like if you mention Volta, the Weta, and Beime, they are there. If you mention Greater Accra, the Pong irrigation scheme is there. Central Ochireko is there. If you mention Upper East, you can talk of the Tono, the Via. But if you mention a place like Upper West region, they do not have any major irrigation dam. You understand? If you mention a place like Northeast, they do not have any major dam. If you look at the BA, Ashanti, the same thing. So the idea of the Irrigation for Wealth was to create these dams, these model large dams across all these particular regions. My understanding is that they are still doing feasibility, which for me I think has been quite long. This for me, those are investment that you put all your money there. You understand? And we were even making a case that for the government's bigger infrastructure program, that's a big push. They should have been able to state that about 50% of that allocation big push should go to agriculture. So if we purpose in our hearts that for the next 4 years, if you are putting, let's say, 1.1, I think the big push is over, I've gotten a total amount, but if you are putting about half of that amount into agricultural infrastructure, providing irrigation facilities, you can imagine the transformation that we have in this country. One major irrigation facility we have, irrigation plan that we have at the Northeast region, that's the Paolugu. Up to now, we don't know the head and tail of that facility. When we spent over $12 million to do feasibility, when you go there, there's virtually nothing there. So, as a country, we need to be deliberate about that. And I think that it is not late for the government to think that when it comes to agricultural infrastructure, especially irrigation, we can still find a way and push some of the money from the big push to put up irrigation facilities. You are creating literally employment for a whole generation of people if we do that.
Yeah, I think over the period we've spoken about post-harvest losses, but a major focus for us has been production and getting the goods on the market. Where are we with the fight against post-harvest losses from your perspective?
Not really well. The data that I glanced through, we are not doing very well. We are averaging between 25 to 30% post-harvest losses, which is very high, and a lot has to do with farmer education, and the issue of extension is a major problem, where you need farmers to be educated on how to go about their agronomic practices. Unfortunately, the extension ratio in Ghana is very, very low. The world standard is 1 officer to 500 farmers. In Ghana, we are doing 1 to 2,700 farmers. That's ridiculously bad. So a lot of farmers, even in their lifetime, have not encountered any extension of before, and that's very dangerous. Also, some also has to do with the quality of input that even the farmers use, issues of the seeds, the fertilizer, and things like that. All those are things that we need to work on. And then when it comes to the post-harvest proper itself, harvesting, equipment are a major problem. You can go to a lot of rice producing areas where they produce so much rice, but they do not have combined harvesters. And in some of the districts, there are occurrences of bushfires and rains come and destroy their crops. So when they do not get the equipment in time, they lose all those crops. So those are also the issues that run with post-harvest. That the governments, the politicians, the ministers, they know. Some of them are being farmers, so they have practical idea. But how to actualize the implementation and ensure that there is transformation, that's where we are lacking, and that's something that I think that priority should be given to.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that last year the production was quite okay, but Ghana statistical data we saw this week shows that food insecurity rate rose by 38% in the last quarter of the year last year. Strategically, how do we address this situation?
I think we need to identify what is causing that huge population of us being food insecure. Because the issue of food security has to do with 4 key elements, right? The issue of access to the food, the pricing, affordability, the availability of the food, the issue of the stability, that you are sure that you are getting the food every time, and the issue of utility, how you get nutritious food to ensure that you have the optimum growth. The report is saying that about 1/3 of Ghanaians do not enjoy those basic things of food security, and that's a problem, because how is it that a country that has the potential to produce food to feed the entirety of West Africa, you still have people in that country that cannot get access to food? That's a problem. Or a country where in the midst of food gluts, there's so much food, families don't know what to do with the food, but there's a section of the population that cannot access food. That's a problem. So the problem, as I mentioned, might not necessarily be production. Even if there's a production constraint, there could be the cost of production, which might still be high. So it renders the food to be quite high. So maybe the very poor people cannot afford, and that could be a problem. It will also be a problem of the marketing constraint. So we are not able to push the food from where it is so much to areas where they do not have food. You understand? So I think those are the things that government needs to look at. And for me, with this report, I think that government should use this as a lesson. And they should also know that the rate could even become worse if nothing urgent is done about the current market crisis. Because a lot of farmers now do not have the incentive to produce, because they have stock that they cannot sell. So in the next farming season, you might not have a lot of them going into production, and that's a big problem. What might happen is that the farmers will not be able to produce. In the midst of glut, you are having the rates at that level. So imagine a situation where farmers stop producing, they are producing little. Then you have very little food that needs to be available for all farmers and for all Ghanaians, and that could be catastrophic. So this should be a lesson for the government, that they should use this report and it should spark them to address the current market crisis that farmers are facing. However they have to do it, they have the resources, they have the mandate. The president should be very deeply interested in this. Get the institutions, whether NAFCO, the ministry, trade, whoever, get them buy from the farmers as quickly as possible. Let the farmers have relief, and let them have that energy to go into another production and produce for us. Because if that doesn't happen, it might get worse for us.
I think the topic on most Ghanaian citizens' mind at the moment is the impact of galamsey on our agricultural produce. From what are the farmers saying about the situation?
In the galamsey prone areas, it's been heartbreaking stories after the other. Over the past months, I've been talking to a couple of them around, especially in the Ashanti region, Western and Western North, and it's devastating. Some of them actually do not even have an idea that their farms are being taken over by Galamsees. So only for them to go and see that the whole place is gone. Some of them, the passage to their farms has been taken over. So literally they have no access to their farms. You understand? Now getting labor in some of those areas is now a task, because the amount of money that they have been charging, and even there's not even common in all those areas. As far as Upper East, even getting laborers to do your work is difficult, because the youths are moving into Galamsey to do Galamsey, because for them the returns are very high as compared to going to farming. So the Galamsey is a major problem. I see 9 months is going down and taking some actions against those who are involved. I see them working on the water body that have been polluted. They are doing bits, but I don't think that their actions are measuring to the kind of impact the Galamsey has had on us. If you go to some areas in the western region where we have some farmers there who are into irrigation, the whole irrigation dam, when you look at the water, it has become very muddy. So they cannot use that water to even farm. A group of farmers who were into, they actually do twice a production in 2 years. Now they have reduced to do 1 year production, relying on the rain when they have an irrigation facility, because that place has been polluted. So the impact of it on our agricultural sector is huge, on the water bodies, on the farmlands, availability of labor, even on the quality of the produce that farmers who are in those areas are producing. So it's huge. So I think that the government's response should be even higher than what you are witnessing. But that's not what I see. I see they are doing something, but it is not proportionally higher to combat what the guys are doing. And if government is really committed to combating Galamsey and its effect on the economy, their response should be much, much higher than what they are doing currently.
So that's our episode for the food chain this week. We've been speaking to the Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Mr. Bismarck Norte, and he's been sharing with us some of the challenges facing the agri sector, from production to market access. This has been Food Chain with me, Jessie Eramagbako. See you on another episode.